Hello again, and welcome back to the final lecture of the Disciples' History and Polity course. We've covered many topics over the past 7 weeks, and this week we take a final look at the structure, and I'm going to focus on the general structure this week, since last week I spoke about the congregational and regional levels. But first, a little short history about how it came to be. Um, After Campbell and Stone joined together in 1832, the movement uh, became more involved in missionary work. Women's ministries grew, but there was a split that was occurring that was finally recognized in 1908 in the Federal Registry of Denominations, of all places, um, which created a separate denomination for the Churches of Christ. Those churches found mostly in the South and in Texas that uh, found the restoration principle to be more important than um, others in the movement found. So there was that first split in 1908, and then as the organization grew around the church, and the missionary endeavors grew, and organizationally, um, the the movement became more like a denomination until in the 60s. There was a movement to uh, bring us together as one denomination. And in 1968, what was then the provisional design for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ was accepted, um, which led to another split where the Churches of Christ Christian Church split off, and those are the independent churches, independent Christian churches now. So we have the Christian Church Disciples of Christ forming as a denomination. Um, and today we have in Indianapolis, which is our headquarters for the general church, we have the general ministries. And they are composed of the Office of the General Minister and President, which has ancillary ministries of the communications ministries, the National Convocation, which we spoke about a few weeks ago, the Reconciliation Ministry, we also spoke of them a few weeks ago, Treasury and Promotion, Week of Compassion, and the Yearbook and Directory Office. All of those are ancillary ministries of the Office of the General Minister and President. But other offices and departments are the Central Pastoral Office for Hispanic Ministries, the Christian Board of Publication, the Christian Church Foundation, which works on inheritance planning and permanent funds, Church Extension, which helps congregational financial planning and building consultations, the Council on Christian Unity, which of course is our ecumenical agency, the Disciples Benevolent Services, which used to be known as the National Benevolent Association until their restructure a few years ago, uh, Disciple Home Missions, which is all the ministries in the general church in the United States and Canada, the Disciples of Christ Historical Society, which of course is assists congregational historians and scholars and holds the historical archives for our denomination. The Division of Overseas Ministries, which is also known as Global Ministries, and I'll talk about them in a minute. Higher Education and Leadership Ministries, the North American Pacific Asian Disciples, and the Pension Fund. All of those make up the general ministries of our church. Now, I pulled out the global ministries um, as an example of some of our ecumenical work. The global ministries several years ago united with the uh, similar organization in the United Church of Christ so that all of our global ministry work, our missionary work, our work with partners in the various countries around the world um, is done through that partnership with the United Church of Christ. And in fact, ecumenically, we have a unique relationship with the United Church of Christ in that we have an ecumenical partnership that um, is not a merger, but it indicates a special relationship between our two denominations. Um, there was, of course, much wailing and gnashing of teeth at one point over the ecumenical partnership because of people who did think that it was a clandestine merger and thought we were merging with the United Church of Christ, and nobody wanted. The General Assembly of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ meets every other year in odd number years, so it's meeting this year, um, to conduct business, to be in fellowship, to have educational programs, and just to get together. If you've never been to a General Assembly, it sort of feels like a big family reunion. This year, the General Assembly is in July in Nashville. I urge anybody who possibly could do so to attend. You hear wonderful preaching, marvelous worship services, and get to see the church doing the business of being the church. Of course, the decisions made at the General Assembly level do not directly affect the other expressions of the church, though they can speak to um, the congregational and regional levels. But in our polity, the decisions made by the General Assembly cannot dictate to the other expressions how they are to operate or what they are to believe. So the General Assembly speaks for itself, which can lead to a little confusion at times, since we are very used to other forms of polity, such as Presbyterian or Episcopal polities, where a higher level can speak for another level of the church. But we don't work that way. We work in a way that that's the old word, manifestation, each expression um, is responsible for its own speaking. Nobody can tell the region how to work. Nobody can tell a local congregation how to work. And certainly the General Assembly is not about to do that. Sharon Watkins cannot come into any of our congregations and tell us what to do. So there we have it. The history and polity of our denomination in a very quick survey. I hope you've enjoyed your time with us, and I look forward to your comments in the forums. Take care. Goodbye.